Tonight's meeting of the Westford School Committee. It's Monday, April 8th. I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. If you'll join me to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you're able.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First up is our consent agenda. So we have meeting minutes from March, 2 warrants, payroll and expenses. Also the statement of interest for Abbott Elementary, which we had talked about at the last meeting and was in the packet for review at our last meeting. That's also for anyone watching, just to know that that's part of the Robinson School project and is just getting the MSBA the other piece of the paperwork that they needed. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second.
Seconded.
Thank you, Bill. All those in favor?
Do we need to do roll call?
Yep. Roll call. Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Valerie and I'm an aye.
Aye.
Sean? Bill?
Aye.
Chris?
Chris?
Chris. Chris.
I heard an aye there.
No, he's.
I heard, no, you're like, oh, okay. Oh. One, all right, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Chris, can you hear us?
He might be,
Okay.
if he's.
All right, we'll move on to public comment.
Yes, that's an audio. My phone's here.
Wow. Okay.
Short, just keep it short and sweet. We got an aye out of you. Thank you.
Got all that.
Next up is public comment. A reminder that public comment is available for any item or topic on or off the agenda, near the top of the agenda, for individuals to share their thoughts. Speakers will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Please use public comment even if you refer to something later on the agenda. Virtual public comment is available through Zoom. Raise your hand and you'll be promoted to panelist and unmuted, or in person at the microphone at Millennium Room, Conference Room B. So we'll just give a minute to see any burning questions.
Doesn't look like it. Nope.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to informational updates. And we'll start with the superintendent, please.
Well, there was an eclipse today, and people seem to be excited to witness that a little bit. Actually, outside of that, one of the things that happened, which I thought was great, a couple of our teachers had learned that there are ways to recycle the glasses that we were able to obtain and provide for everybody. And so each one of the schools will actually be collecting them again if people want to bring them back to school, and we can then donate them to other areas that will be experiencing eclipses in the future that might not have the resources to benefit from something like this. So I thought that was a great way for us to be able to also give back.
And can you clarify who funded the glasses? I was asked that question.
So it was $3,000 in order for us to provide glasses for every single student and staff member in the district.
Yep.
It was not a large sum. I mean, $3,000, yes, can be a large sum. Within the scope of our budget, it's not a large amount. I did use one-time funds to just pay for it because we were able to have that. But it was approximately $3,000. I can give you the exact number.
Nope, that's plenty.
Such a talk about bringing learning to life. I mean,
I misspoke, though. I previously thought it was a grant, so I just wanted to clarify.
It wasn't. No, we did just use one-time funds to do it.
Great, thank you. Any other updates?
No, actually, we were just going to. I'm sorry, I forgot we were in the middle of updates. We were talking about the eclipse. No, outside of that. And then, I mean, just a reminder for everybody that Wednesday, there's no classes as we observe Eid.
Yep, thank you. Assistant Superintendent, nothing? Okay, school committee updates, Ming Chen, Catherine?
I have policy, but we'll hold off.
Okay. Sean?
None.
Bill?
Finance Subcommittee will meet this Thursday in lieu of last week's storm. We'll meet this Thursday, so 3 to 4.
Yes. Anything else, Bill? Okay. A couple updates I have was Superintendent and Evaluation Subcommittee met last week. And we checked in on the presentation you're going to see tonight for the STIP review of year 1 and the look ahead to year 2. And we also touched base on the schedule for presentation of evidence and evaluation comments. So any outgoing members will still be expected to participate in the process and submit feedback. And then that subcommittee will compile the evidence in that composite evaluation. Probably end of May or first week of June, depending on how things shake out with the budget. And our May meetings are a little chock full at the moment, so we'll see how that goes. You said finance subcommittee, that was superintendent. Oh, I was gonna just say, next week with school vacation break, and then a reminder that the Monday coming back is no kindergarten
Thank you.
because of the
Yes.
screenings.
Yep.
And then the second question I get asked the most is, with the snow day, when is the last day of school? So that's Tuesday, June 18th,
Will be
early
after.
release.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great.
Do you want to highlight that survey that's gone out for town meeting?
Sure, yeah, that's a great idea. So today on the town website, I don't know if anybody got an alert, there's going to be a budget forum the week of town meeting, the Wednesday of town meeting. It'll be hybrid, virtual, and here in person. But we know that that's not always a perfect date. It's the second night of Passover, I believe. So there is a way to submit questions ahead of time, and it will be recorded. That's April 24th, Wednesday, April 24th. Also on the town website they're trying out a new anonymous attendance survey. So if you think you're going to town meeting, or you might go to town meeting, or you're not going to town meeting, there's now a way to indicate that as sort of a loose gauge on how many people to expect.
And we're going to add that to the billboard this week as well,
Awesome.
too, so that
Oh,
people
great.
see that. Yeah.
And it's very quick. I don't know if anyone's done it yet, but I wouldn't even say it took me 22 minutes, so
Yep,
20
great,
seconds.
20 seconds
Quick.
probably. Quick.
Quick and done.
thank you. Okay, Chris, any internet, any service for long enough for an update?
That's a no.
New Hampshire Whites.
That's a no,
Okay, I'm
apparently.
gonna move on to students then.
Data.
The snow day. I'm told that it's like the first time it's ever happened that seniors' last day was a snow day, so we got pushed out to Friday. So we had I don't know who decided it, but Toomey sent us an email with like the schedule, and it was a really wonky schedule, but it had us go through all of our classes.
Which is nice.
See all our teachers before.
Little closure.
That's what he would have said in the email. Yeah, it was for closure. Last week, the Spanish classes I know went to New York. Class 24 went to the Celtics game. Some students got on the Jumbotron. I remember that. The ACT is happening on the 13th, this week. And prom tickets, I think. No, and so I think if you are to get them, you need to get them by the end of this Friday.
Quarter 4 has started, which means for seniors, we're either out on capstone or coming back for AP classes, or both. And then this Thursday, there's the Hypnotist Show run by DECA, which is always a really big event that happens usually every year or 2 years. So they're selling tickets, I think, online and in person for the show.
Sounds like fun.
Great.
Yeah, it's pretty
Do
fun.
the teachers partake?
No, unfortunately not.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right, great, thank you, guys. So we'll move on to the first order of business, which is an update on the Strategic District Improvement Plan, review of Year 1 activity, and presentation of Year 2 priority areas.
Sure. So what I'd like to do first is invite 2 of our students, Sam Ketchum and Andrew Mejia, if you would both come up and join us at the table here, and we're going to unveil for the first time publicly this wonderful poster that the 2 of you have designed for us to use with our Strategic District Improvement Plan. If you're able to, there it is, boom. So,
Look at that.
yay, woo! All of a sudden it's there. So we had reached out to WA students to see if there was anybody who'd be interested in helping us to design some one-page poster that we could then have visible in all of our schools, in our offices, in classrooms, and then Sam and Andrew reached out to me and asked me if I would review a couple of their designs, and we met a couple of times, and this is what we come up with. So I wanted to give them a minute. What I didn't do, which I should have done, is I should have actually put your names in the agenda, which I didn't do, so I'm sorry about that. But we will make sure that we give you the public accolades that I think you deserve for your work. But I was hoping that you might be able to talk for just a minute or two to explain to the school committee, like, how did you end up working on this? What were your thoughts about this? I know our conversations, but I'm also just curious as to what went into it before we ever talked. And then they might have a question or two for you.
Yeah, so Sam and I are both juniors at Westford Academy, and we take the Graphic Design 2 honors class. And it kind of stumbled upon our teacher, Mrs. McDonald, who told us, hey, there's this opportunity for students to kind of show their talent and provide something that would benefit the town. And I know Sam and I, we both kind of shot our hands up and were like, sign us up. Because this is like a real world application of what we learn in the class. To be able to listen to your, to the provider or the organization, be able to make a product that will satisfy their needs. So yeah, then Sam and I met a couple times and met with our principal, Mr. Toomey, and kind of presented with him a couple ideas, narrowed some ideas down. Then we went to you, Dr. Chu, and kind of narrowed it down further from there, and kind of Frankensteined a couple pieces between the designs that we had made, and then ended up here. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just talk a bit about our design process. So I think the first thing that we definitely wanted to do was have a very clear hierarchy in all of the information. So we wanted the first thing to be obviously the title. So right there at the top, we wanted to make that nice and big. And we added what I think is a cool detail, which is the town emblem, I guess you would call it, right there behind the Westford Public Schools. And then right below that, it goes right into the overarching mission and values.
Oh my God, sorry. You do realize I'm projecting.
I know. I was trying to start at the top and go
Yeah.
down. But I can't.
That's good, though. Now
Your
you can.
touchpad. Go up a little bit.
Okay.
Sorry, Sam.
Your touchpad is
No.
like. Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Hi.
Sorry.
Yeah, so just right into the overarching mission and values. And then right below that, we decided to do the core values, the spirit values. And for that, because of the acronym, we wanted to have some sort of graphic that was really bold. And so we ended up going with this brightly colored rainbow design, which I really like because it clearly has each letter spells out spirit. And then below that, all the details, which I quite like. And there's the strategic objectives. So pretty simple, just listing those. And then at the bottom, this is an important detail that Mr. Chu had talked to us about, which is having all the schools there at the bottom, so just so everybody understands, I guess, where this is applied.
Now, they might not all know what roots actually means, because you heard the name, I think, before they even heard the name. Can you tell them what roots is? If you remember.
It's, if I remember the name, it's Westford, what's the second thing? 18 through 22 transitional vocation
cool.
program.
That's right.
Is that
Two
it?
world
That's right.
premieres
Yeah.
happening tonight.
Right?
Wow.
So
Mic
one
drop.
of the things that they had noticed was when you originally had the idea to put the names on there, and they had pulled some old information and saw the preschool, integrated preschool.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, integrated preschool now is at all of the schools. So I said, well, why don't we move to, and in their class, they were also working on a design for the Roots logo. And so
Wow.
Roots is not an acronym. It's but it's the name that they've decided to brand the 18 to 22-year-old program as it is Roots to, the future into transition. So now we have all of the schools listed, and we've included Roots, and so this is actually the first thing that it's doing all that. But their idea of having the hierarchy going through, we start with our mission, then we go to the core values, then we talk about our strategic objectives, because that can change, but then this top part we know would stay the same. And it honestly just pops. It's just a really great image.
I love it. I mean, when
Yeah.
we were writing the essay the whole time, we were always keeping, this needs to fit on a one-pager.
Right.
We've no idea what
Right.
it's going to look like, but
Right.
it's amazing to see, and I love the fact that we've got 2 students
Yeah.
who've achieved that. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
That looks awesome.
Do you have any questions or?
I remember making trifold brochures and graphic design. This beats that and then some.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
incredible. Just
Thank you.
And I think to really state, we really appreciate it, when we go to the conferences, we often go to some of these panels that talk about communications and the importance of it and all these different resources and materials and, what they should look like and what they should express. And I think you've nailed it from what these experts within that field are telling us as school committee members to do. And it hasn't cost us an arm and a leg like some of these professional places would charge us, but it absolutely looks like something we could have
Yeah.
got as a proof from a design company. So,
And to that end, I mean,
yeah.
you both totally conducted yourselves professionally the whole time, which was fantastic.
Awesome.
Not that I was surprised, but it was just nice. Like
Yeah,
when
it's awesome.
when you had the idea, you reached out to me and you said, "Is there a time we could meet?" We met. I think we met twice in person.
Yep.
And the first time you had multiple designs for me. You talked through what you were thinking about. You took copious notes and then reiterated back what we had talked about during the meeting. And you also did a really nice job as designers kind of leading me towards what I think you preferred as well. Even though you gave me options, I think we all kind of settled on the same idea, and it was because you had already thought through that in the first place, which I think was great. But kudos to you, kudos to your teacher. Thank you for the work that you've done, and I'm also thrilled that you're juniors, because not only will you have opportunities to continue doing this work next year, but you will see
Yeah.
your work all over the place,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool.
That's awesome.
And last year, through the HR initiatives, we
Yep.
were encouraged to rebrand ourselves to make us look, an attractive district for people to want to come and work and teach in Westford. And so
Right.
certainly
Yeah.
to
So this will-
incorporate that
right.
into our website, into all of our hiring paperwork will be great.
Yeah, if we could get a copy in this room.
Yeah.
Yep.
That would be
We'll
great.
we'll have poster size in multiple locations.
Awesome.
We'll post it on the website. We'll be including it in our packages, our HR packages. We'll have smaller versions that can exist
Yeah.
in classrooms and stuff like that. I think it's fantastic.
And I'd love if on the website or where we use it that we can actually say,
Yeah, we will.
designed by our students.
We will.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think it's
That's a
awesome.
good idea.
Any other questions?
That was awesome.
that's great.
I feel good.
Thank you both.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Thank you.
Congratulations on
Appreciate
great
that.
work. And we look
And thanks for
forward to
coming tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate hearing
Thanks for
from
the
you.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You're very welcome. We are going to talk for a while about the strategic plan, and then we're going to be talking about a lot of other things. We will not at all be insulted if you don't stay for the meeting.
What he said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank
You,
you very
you are
much.
welcome to stay, but if you leave, we won't be insulted at all.
So it was a great lead-in.
Right. So that being said, I shared with all of you a slideshow, a 6-slide
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now.
presentation for, so as we go into this first progress report for our strategic district improvement plan, we haven't done this before. So what I tried to do is I put together something that I thought might serve as a template for us for the next couple of years. It was the best way that I was thinking that I could articulate our progress and then talk about how it's going to inform our year 2 action plan, which is what our goal is. And knowing that we are about to lead into our school improvement plan process, we were talking about that in an earlier meeting, or actually that might have been an agenda setting meeting where we were talking about the idea of having the progress of school improvement plans in addition to the new school improvement plans. And what I feel like we used to use in the past was a little wonky in that it was a completely separate document. And so I'm trying to synthesize it all in a way that it's easier to digest, it's easier to understand. And so I shared this with you tonight. So if you go to, the first couple of slides will have one of our goals, and then I talk about the initiatives that we've had, action items for this year, and the progress that we've made. The last slide you'll see, I talk about a few of the initiatives that we actually didn't tackle this year, but there's an action plan for the future. So that's just the reason why it's separated out. So as we're going through this, you'll see not all of the initiatives are listed in here. But our first objective was to ensuring equity, infuse our equity work into our curriculum and instruction, the heart of what we do. And so our first initiative, conducting an equity audit of our resources. This year, we've engaged with AIR, the organization, to conduct our equity audit. It's something that it's progress that we had shared earlier in the year. We've been meeting with them. We have contracted with them after going through a process of reviewing multiple proposals to select this organization. What they presented to us is a 2-year timeline for an equity audit.
Yep.
And so it leads us into year 2 of our action plan as well too. So we have an established working group already working with AIR, and we are finalizing survey focus areas. We will be collecting data this spring, and then we'll be assessing that and looking at it over the summer. And I think we'll still be collecting some more data in the fall, but the second year really focuses on how do you take those findings and present those findings, and then how do you implement recommendations and actually monitor those implementations, right? So that's really what that first initiative talks about. So you'll see we have progress in year 1, and then how that leads into the action plan for year 2. For the second initiative, it's focusing on our Universal Design for Learning framework and the work we've been doing there. This year, our full leadership team has been led by our curriculum coordinators. We've been building capacity within our building leadership specifically. We've been piggybacking on the work that we did last year as well too, making that, I think, a more robust understanding. We know that the implementation of Universal Design for Learning is really a 5 to 7 year process. And so we feel pretty confident with where we're at in this timeline. And you'll see on that second bullet item there, we've developed an engagement tool. It's a Google form that we've been using with all of our principal walkthroughs, and we plan to continue using as we visited classes. And so if you go into the action plan item for this initiative for next year, our goal is that we roll out this work with the engagement tool and with the engagement framework within Universal Design for Learning in each of the buildings, with our principals and assistant principals leading that work in faculty meetings and some of our early release time, along with support from our curriculum coordinators. Our curriculum coordinators have done a phenomenal job really leading the charge, and they're going to be supporting the building-based initiatives, but we already know that they're connected to multiple buildings, so we're going to kind of partner people up. They can't actually be in all buildings at all the time, so our principals and assistant principals will sort of be leading that. And we're going to be focusing just on one of the frameworks, and that's engagement. So it's taking it piece by piece as we go through this process. And then the last initiative is ensuring that the variability of all learners is prioritized as an asset and centered in discussions and decisions around instruction and learning. While that's a very specific thing, that's also a very large philosophical thing at the same time. And so this year, we've expanded on with the Mirko Chardin was the work. Mirko was leading our work with our leadership team last year, and so we've expanded on the work that we've done with him in exploring variability in general. And the other piece is that when we talk about the variability of all learners and the decisions and discussions that take place, we really want to also focus on the professional development that we're doing with the new IEP. The state has developed a new individualized education plan form for our special education students, and we've been doing professional development with Alan Bloom throughout the year because we need to roll that out next year, and it will be live next year. So there's a whole bunch of work that's been going on there. So I would say that even just having the bullet new IEP PD with Alan Bloom is that's like 100,000 foot level.
I was about to
right?
say.
It's kind of a big thing, but there's a lot of work that's been going on. So the action plan for next year is to make sure that our Power School resources for the new IEP rollout, that we're utilizing all of that. The best part about now using the tools that we have with Power School is that we're going to have a more universal documentation for our 504 plans, as well as additional student support in general using Power School. When we were just using eSped in the past, it was just limited to our IEPs, and this is truly allowing us to have a more universal documentation district-wide, which I think is going to be a huge benefit for us. And then I think another thing we want to talk about specifically next year is how are we going to articulate that variability is an asset in meetings and documentation. So when we're setting agendas, are we specifically identifying that we're opening with a discussion about the strengths and the asset approach of the student that we're meeting, if it's an individual student or even if it's groups of students that we're talking about. So that's sort of an action plan for year 2.
Should we ask questions now or wait till the end?
Doesn't matter to me. Maybe now, maybe as we're
Section
going
by
through it,
section.
maybe.
I just wanted to check, and I know, like you said, the IEP is 1,000 foot or 100,000 feet
Right.
level. Do you anticipate also doing some sort of learning sessions for parents as
Yes.
well on the IEP? I
Actually,
assume so, yeah.
today, Director of Special Education and Social Emotional Learning, Gerard Coughlin, was telling us that they've already started planning for 2 different open forums for parents. Now, the biggest challenge with that is that it's an open forum which is going to be universal, and the whole nature of the plan is that it's individualized. So it's not going to be an opportunity for parents to be
Yeah.
asking specific questions about their specific
No.
child, but they are planning to have a Q&A, sort of an overview, maybe one during the day and one in the evening, so that families can get a sense as to what will it look like,
Yeah.
and what to expect.
Yeah.
That's sort of a
And
thing.
hybrid or?
They were talking about having it. He said in person, but I think
Or at
it'll
least
be
recorded
it'll
or
be both.
something?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I think the goal is to have opportunities. So he didn't say whether it would be a hybrid or whether he would do both or record it or whatever. But
Okay.
we'll make sure that it's accessible.
Chris, if I can help
Yeah.
out or join in any way, I'd love to help you out there. So,
Yeah,
'cause it
that'd
is a lot coming.
Yeah, you're living through that. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or move on?
That's good.
Okay. So our second strategic objective is also focusing on ensuring equity. This is assessing our organizational structures to ensure equitable learning environment for all of our students. So the primary focus here is really our master plan. So the first initiative that we're talking about is the development of our master plan. And so when we talk about the progress that we've made this year, we established our working group that met weekly. We've met with all of the principals. We've been reviewing the recommendations from SMMA with the building principals. We had to develop the MSBA SOI for Robinson, which is something you just voted on earlier in this
Abbott.
evening. For Abbott, thank you. But that's I just saw SOI and I immediately started going. But part of our progress was that Robinson has been invited into the eligibility phase, which is why we created the additional SOI for Abbott as supporting documents. So as we look to next year for the action plan, we want to complete the tasks that will be presented to us beginning in August with the MSBA eligibility phase. There's a very specific timeline. It can't start until August, but we will have to meet certain timelines and tasks that we'll be working on throughout that process. One of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing as we're looking at the master plan is also, and we're looking at a potential project with the Robinson School, which could result in the consolidation of the Abbott and Robinson, is to look at our immediate and long-term redistricting strategies based on our capacity needs. Do we need to make changes in the short term versus the long term? It's been one of our conversations as we've looked at every single building. It's been, okay, well, what are the short-term needs versus what are things, and Robinson and Abbott being the best example there, we looked at those buildings knowing that, well, they might end up being part of a much larger project, but we need to make sure if there's an emergency that we have to deal with right now, we want to look at that. And at the same time, when we're looking at all the other buildings, we don't want to ignore any issues that might be taking place there because we have something major going on in a different building. So as we develop the district master plan, you're going to see that every single building will have their own priorities and their own timelines that'll be listed with that. It's something, I think, Valerie, you've been doing a great job sharing pictures as we've been going into the buildings to remind people that, we have 3 what we call new buildings, Chrysopoli, Stony Brook, and Miller, which are now 20 years old.
Right, and I feel like the other side of that coin is to say it in the different way, which is we often point out Day, Abbott, and Robinson's needs, and then we don't want to make it seem like all the other buildings are in tip-top shape and have no needs whatsoever. I mean, walking around Miller, the roof leaks and the flashing leaks that they're seeing are impacting learning. So, I mean, it's there is a wide range.
So next year we'll be making sure that we're not only, we will have already shared the master plan with all of you, but we want to make sure that we are presenting it to the capital committee in town, and where applicable, even the permanent town building committee. And you'll see later on that I mentioned it with other groups as well too. The second one, go
Sorry,
ahead.
and I just wanted to circle back to, before we move on from 2.2, which is that redistricting, the population balancing, the facilities, space utilization, right? Like all those that we've continually heard throughout this process, especially the wider community budget concerns. I think it's really important that we're going to put that sort of front and center next year.
And I think maybe something to add into that point, it just was kind of literally spelling out, like, do we have a communication plan or strategy for the community on this information as we gather it, that it might be actually worthwhile adding it into that, to just have, kind of mindful plan on how best to roll that out, because there's a lot of information coming from different places, and some of it can be chunky. So I think it would be beneficial for our community members for our families.
To have, we could have a forum about that or something to that effect.
Just to figure out what's the best way to communicate that
And
information.
I think some of that too will tie into the eligibility phase, right?
Yes.
Because we'll have to create a committee.
Exactly.
We probably need a landing page on the district website, all that kind of stuff. We'll start formulating.
The second initiative is really has been here with the committee for the most part in determining the options to best support healthy school start times for all students. And so you started a subcommittee, you've been establishing and gathering data, engaged with the digital routing platform to analyze what we're doing, and we are looking at the fact that there will be some sort of recommendation this spring that for this purpose, for the action plan, since we don't know exactly what that recommendation is, we're saying for a potential FY26 implementation. One of the things that we've just said is that if the recommendations don't require major changes, then there isn't anything at this moment in time prohibiting us from doing something for FY25. But for all intents and purposes, what we're anticipating that it would be for FY26. So then, the last piece is also about policies. And so again, the policy committee has been updating policies all year, continues to do that, looking at the MASC model. We've had a subgroup within the DEI committee that was looking at handbooks as well too. So an action item for year 2 is that there's going to be a specific policy review as part of the equity audit. So then we'll look at that information and we'll see, okay, what does that mean, and how should that impact the work that we're doing there? And then we really will just continue with an ongoing review of our district policies, I think, in the practice that we've already established.
And I think, well, I know I would appreciate that kind of outside expert, eyes on our policies and give us that guidance. I think we're making strides and really trying to do right, but it's always nice to have the validation or not validation that we're on the right track, so.
Right.
I think that's awesome.
Yep. So our third strategic objective is promoting social emotional well-being, and the objective is to prioritize mental health and wellness for all of our students and staff by exploring strategies to minimize academic and/or social emotional pressure valves that negatively impact performance. So the two initiatives that we actually, I think, had a little bit more progress with, specifically this year, was 3.3 and 3.4. And so the first one was securing district-wide resources that help support student skill development and fostering resilience and self-regulation. We have developed in our 3 to 5 schools, specifically Aday and Crisafulli, different specialized programs that have been meeting the needs of our students at the time. That's not entirely district-wide, but it's taking place in 2 different buildings as well. And so some of this also is also going into the conversations that we're having when we're looking at redistricting and we're looking at how we are placing students in general, right? And that's a bigger conversation. And are we in a position where our neighborhood schools can provide what all of the students in that neighborhood need before needing to send a student to a different neighborhood school, right, ideally. So that's part of a bigger conversation. But we have started that progress. The action plan for next year, you'll see that our school improvement plans are going to have some more specific action items in each building around this type of, around social emotional well-being and the pressure valves. One of the things we want to look at is as we've identified needs in the 3 to 5 grades, we want to make sure and assess our K to 2 levels as well too. What we've been doing has been responsive to our student needs, and so we'll just continue to look to see what the needs are that we can meet at that given time as best as we can. The other piece is that we do have new standards for physical education and wellness and health, and so we will be rolling those out, and so that will be impacting from the state. Thank you. Yep. So DESE has implemented new standards, and so we'll be seeing how that impacts our classes as well. And then the other initiative that we looked at was strengthening relationships and community by utilizing collaborative and restorative principles and practices. So we've been able to do professional development this spring with our middle school staff in training for community circles that they've been bringing into the middle schools and to their advisories, and we're going to be collecting that data and feedback from both the students and from the staff. The students as to the experiences that they've had participating in the circles, and the staff both implementing the circles as well as the professional development in general, so that we can kind of share that with the committee as well too. Another piece, WA, they did a virtual training in introduction to community circles. Members of the Westford Academy administration participated in that, and they actually presented that to the faculty at their last PD day, introducing them to community circles. And so you'll see that the action plan for next year will be to expand on the community circle use at the middle school during advisory, and then WA will be really identifying a cohort of faculty volunteers to explore using community circles within their content areas. And so we'll have a better idea as to what that looks like for next year. The last piece is we are working with Think Kids, which is the MGH organization that has been a part of collaborative problem solving. We had initially looked to set up a time for them to work with our administrators this spring. And my current thought is we actually have, in a good way, a number of our assistant principals at the elementary level who have been doing fantastic work have also found themselves as finalists in a couple of different principal positions in different districts. We don't have principal openings, and so they're ready to kind of do that work. And so what we actually think we want to do is we want to work with Think Kids to do this work in the summer when we have the team that we know we're going to have for next year, as opposed to doing work this spring where we could end up with, a percentage of our elementary leadership turning over. And so that's on the agenda. We're going to make sure that it happens. We're making it a priority for our summer leadership, because I feel like that would be the best time to do that. And then potentially, depending on the work that we're doing in the PD plan that we have for next year, we know that a lot of the PD will still be with EL, the curriculum, the universal curriculum that we've been getting for the K to 5 classrooms. But if there's a way to bring in Think Kids to work with our faculty, we want to do that as well too. So that's something that we're looking at. So that's the progress and then the action plan for that. And then our last objective is sustainability, increasing sustainability. So collaborating with our town partners to support, wait, I didn't change, there we go. I started reading this different. Collaborate with our town partners to support goals outlined in Westford's climate roadmap, authored by the Clean Energy and Sustainability Company. So,
Committee. Oh, yeah.
Committee. I said company, right?
Yeah.
Company. Committee. The initiatives, so what we have been able to work on is 4.1 and 4.2. You'll see 4.3 and 4.4 on the next slide. But we've been communicating and exposing these resources and sharing the resources on a wider level, making sure that all of our students and staff are familiar with them. Our curriculum coordinators have included review and discussion in their content meetings. We've been making sure that the roadmap is a resource that students and faculty are able to point to in the STEM fairs and in project-based learning strategies. We've continued to promote Earth Month in our activities, specifically in April, as we are sitting here right now. The action plan for next year is to identify and document specific grade level units that review and access the climate roadmap throughout the year, and to invite students to present selected work here at the school committee meeting. I think that would be a great opportunity for students to come and share their work with you if it wasn't also just a targeted tour throughout the buildings as well too. I know you go and see the STEM fairs and you see the different things that they're doing, but it would be an interesting thing to give them an opportunity to come here. And then 4.2 is to articulate within each school improvement plan specific commitments that encourage individual and group behavior adjustments to support climate goals. So you will see that our school improvement plans will include different goals at the grade levels in some different schools. When they present those to you in the spring, they've been working on those with their school advisory councils, and so we will see those this year. Next year, I think it'll be an important action plan for us to, on a district level, for us to be supporting their building initiatives as best as we can. Another thing that I think it will be helpful for us is for our principals to share their progress within our principal meetings. When we change our principal meetings to each school so that they're able to visit the schools and see what's going on. But this extracurricular things and or changes that might be taking place in a cafeteria or something that might be taking place in the way in which they're doing their business with recycling might not be something that would be visible in a classroom visit. So we're going to make sure that we're providing airtime for the principals to share their successes with each other, because I think they all have different ideas, which I think will be a good thing for it to spread. And then I thought this year, as we've had different focus areas for the school committee I almost said company again, the school committee tours. I thought it'd be great if we had a tour that was truly focused on sustainability and looking to see what are we doing within the district so that you can see at firsthand different things that are taking place there.
That's a great idea.
Any questions here? So if we go to the next slide, this is where there were 4 initiatives reminding everybody that our strategic district improvement plan is a multi-year plan. And so even as we established these initiatives, we knew that we would not be doing them every single year. And some of the initiatives that I've already talked about we might actually sunset them because they might become woven into our practice in such a way that we don't provide
No further
you know,
deliverable
no
sort of.
information on it.
Yeah.
And so these were 4 that I don't believe that we formally addressed yet. But we do have an action plan for year 2, so we can see that in moving into year 2, what we're going to look at. And so the first one, if we look at 3.1, 3 again is the social emotional well-being strategic objective. And so to identify what can be removed or reimagined from the curriculum calendars and schedules while maintaining high expectations and standards. Now, I say that we've not formally addressed this. I do believe that that's probably one of the initiatives that most people got excited about because we do know that we put a lot on people's plates.
Yeah.
And so I think individually, teachers and principals, they were thinking in terms of, okay, well, what can I take? What do we not have to do? So I feel like on an informal way, people have already been embracing this, right? But what I think would be great for year 2 for our action plan is to actually, one of the things we've talked about was the WA graduation requirements. And so we are going to be reviewing that. We've committed to that. We're putting together a working group to look at the graduation requirements. And so that would be a formal way in which we're looking to see, okay, what are we asking of people, and is this the appropriate ask, really, right? And we'll have those findings and recommendations presented to the school committee in the fall before we get into the FY26 budget development. And now that I think about it, I probably could, maybe I'll even have another action plan just in finding tangible examples, right? Like
That would be great, I
We'll
think.
just do that. We'll just look for tangible examples where I feel like people are doing this, but let's celebrate it and let's find examples of it. So I'll include that as
Because even sometimes the examples can help trigger somebody
Something
else.
else. That's right.
Yeah.
And
So-
even just to share that practice across all the faculty,
Right.
you know, what something somebody's doing at Blanchard, they may not be aware of or have thought of at Stoney and
Right,
stuff. So
right.
I think that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
so I'll add that as another action plan item for year 2. I think that would be a good idea. 3.2 was assessing the effectiveness of how student progress is communicated to students and families. And so we haven't really taken a look at that yet this year. And what I would like to see happen next year would be that we develop an actual report card committee for each level to assess the effectiveness of the way in which they are communicating progress. And so each level can have a working group to look at it, which would include teachers, administrators, and parents. I think in some levels, students as well too. I think on every level there will be an interesting way to get student voice. I don't necessarily know if students would be involved in the working group all the time.
Right.
But I think to find out how they feel about how progress is communicated, I think is really important.
Oh, no, sorry, no, yep.
And then presenting that, I think, to the school committee in the spring of 25.
We did for preschool, actually.
We did.
I should have mentioned that earlier.
That's true.
That last year, we started looking at our preschool
Thank you.
report card, because it had not been updated for about 7 years. And so last year, our special education preschool teachers, as well as the related service providers, worked closely with both Magali and Julie Kelly to take a look at what that report card looks like. So we'll be rolling that out next fall. And this year, the work was really in benchmarking what those standards look like for the preschoolers.
So maybe in the beginning of the year, we can do a quick presentation to the school committee about that. as a sort of a lead into what additional work could look like in other grade levels. They'll all look different, most likely, but, because the needs are different, but I think that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm sorry, I missed two. You said that happened earlier this year or last year?
Last year and then
Okay.
into this year as well.
Thank you.
So then, in the sustainability, increasing sustainability in the fourth strategic objective, 4.3 is articulating sustainability goals and priorities within the district master plan. We haven't really developed the district master plan completely yet, and so we haven't really been able to address that. But what we do know is as a action item for year 2, we'll be reviewing the plan with our sustainability coordinator and present identified goals and priorities to the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee as well too, which I think will be helpful to make sure that, I think again, as we're meeting with other groups so that we can hear what their thoughts are, we also want to share with everybody what we're doing.
Yeah.
And for them to see the different things that exist. Sometimes it's not the really shiny, flashy things as much as something that's just an everyday sort of change that we might be looking at. And then the last one is to research and present the viability of investing in electrifying district vehicles and student transportation. Now, knowing that when we identified this objective in this initiative, we didn't foresee that we would be outsourcing our special education van fleet.
Yeah.
So this kind of takes on a different form, but I think next year what we need to do is we really need to create a working group with the sustainability coordinator to look at what additional types of goals we can have. Even we are somewhat limited because we won't own our fleet and we don't own our buses, but we can be partnering with our bus transportation provider to see and work towards helping them to move towards electrification as well too. So I feel like that'll be something that we'll start looking at next year.
Could that committee also kind of, I suppose, explore, is there a path to even long-term, owning our own fleet and, looking at the.
Yeah, I think that's all part of it.
It could be all part of it, yeah.
But so that's that's the progress report.
Yep. Great.
I'd be curious as to how you feel about the template. We asked questions throughout. I'd be happy to entertain any questions now as well.
Yeah, any reactions, feedback?
I loved the template. I thought it was just very simple and clear, and any community member or staff member can easily pick that up and digest it.
Yeah.
But like you said, some of it is like big overview points, but you don't have to go into
Right.
every detail, so I really liked the simplicity
So
of
my
it.
thought being is that next year it will be progress year 2,
Yeah.
action year 3, and then, again, we can link it right next to where the actual 2-page
Yeah,
strategic plan is, so people can see all of the different initiatives in one place. But then they look at it and it clearly says this is progress
yeah.
for year 1.
No, I like it.
Any other students, any reactions or? No? No? You have a question? Okay.
You said the reduction of necessary high school graduation requirements. Do you have any idea of what those would be, or?
No. I just know that people have asked a lot of questions, right? And so we know that there were a lot of questions about the PE requirements in general.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good time for us to just look and see what are our requirements, what are they based on, are they meeting our needs, and kind of going through that. I think a full review of the process to look to see.
Yeah.
It was whether we've made some adjustments in the last couple of years with some of them, but are they in line with what the state is recommending? Are they in line with what colleges are expecting? All that.
And I think some of those conversations happen during budget cycles, but really the best practice is to try to look at that outside of that budget cycle, because you can pull a thread that we don't know where it sort of would unravel to. And so having it separated like this makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah.
I know a lot of districts and school programs that are starting to dive into the comprehensive health and phys ed standards now.
Yep.
This has been a 25-year
Right.
wait, since the last rendition of these. So as you dive into that work, I think it's going to be really impactful to see how you reimagine. You talk about that initiative, the curriculum. I think you're going to see a lot of different blending of areas, and
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued by that and what it can bode for the districts.
Great. And I'm looking at Sean, but we got a preview of this at superintendent evaluation last week, so I guess I asked all my questions there. What question for the committee would be how we want to handle this report on year one document, and if it's, we approved the overall STIP when it was rolled out. These are, the district goals that funnel down into the school improvement plans. I was looking a little bit on if we have any sort of precedent for approving them. We do have this April 9th, 2001
Really?
policy called the blueprint for the Westford Public Schools.
Yeah, ignore that.
Well, it's sort of tangential, P2110, so
That's on
that's
the
the
list
closest,
for-
well, it's the closest I could find to sort of like a district level goals, right? It's not the superintendent evaluation, although some of it overlaps, right, with the work.
So we had
but-
actually, the policy group had identified that and started working on it last year.
Oh, okay.
And we have like a start of kind of a new draft language, but we actually held off on going further with it because we wanted to see how the practice of that kind of the STIP
Okay.
with the SIPs and the how it all kind of dovetailed out, and so that before we start writing the policy, we're actually writing something that's reflecting the practice. Or
Did any of that research show what other districts do with a document like this?
there's varied
Okay.
degrees of it. I mean, some districts have like this document is literally 300 pages long, and so a lot of it is just it lives kind of on the website and stuff, but we've got to update the language there alone.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we're
No,
referring to
I guess I didn't want to go too far into the policy
Okay.
specifically, but the question in my mind at hand is, do we vote on this like yearly update to an STIP?
we didn't come across anything like that.
Okay. Any reactions or thoughts on whether that makes sense? It's kind of, to me, it feels like a policy document, right? Like we're saying these are
we've
informing our goals of the following year.
I think we've already voted on it, like they're, because our STIP
They're action
outlines,
plans of
they're
the
kind
STIP.
of the STIP, and we've already voted on it. To me, my take on it is that really this kind of actually more feeds into the SIPs and then probably more into the superintendent evaluation. That's kind of where we saw it, as opposed to doing another vote, because I feel like we've already voted on
Yeah. The wording at the top, yeah. And
the
on the
overall
left on-
goals, and that's just my 2 cents.
My view on it is that we don't necessarily need to vote on something like this, right? As pointed out, we've already voted on the components of the STEP, right? And this is more about accountability for us and for the superintendent. So I think just posting it where it needs to be so the public can see it and digest it. Beyond that, I don't think we need to.
Great,
Yeah.
okay.
My view on it.
Any other thoughts? Which brings me to a question, which was, is there a plan to post this on the superintendent page or something? Or?
Yes, I think we can,
Okay.
we'll post it with the strategic plan.
Yeah,
And
and the new graphic.
And I was
the new graphic and the new poster.
Yeah.
And make sure that I will share this out to the schools as well too, so that they're seeing you know, the way in which, again, it informs the work that they're doing as well, too.
Yep, okay. Okay, well, that's great. Let's keep going with that.
Thank you.
8 o'clock, we're gonna move on to our 7:45 agenda item. And this is out of some previous discussions we've had to set aside some specific time to talk about the impacts to the intervention supports in the no override scenario. So if you refresh your memory from the long, the Dr. Chu's like original addended budget slideshow.
Right.
There are slides from the January 2nd meeting with, I think I'm looking at slide 47.
Yep.
Thank you, which is, we could start there.
Do you want me to pull that one up?
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay.
Give you a
You're gonna have to
second.
Give me a minute to
Yep.
find it.
So again, this is space to ask any questions, really flush out, feel like we talk about.
So I was thinking
Yep.
if we started first with the academic coach
Okay.
Job description.
Yep.
Because that's actually a job that we already have, we've
Okay.
been utilizing. And we could have a conversation about that, get input from the committee on that, because that actually could be different than the conversation about the intervention model. And
Okay.
then have a conversation about that
Sure.
as well.
Yep, so it was in the packet, everybody has access to the academic coach job description. Sure. Do you want to,
I'm actually going to let Courtney kind
Sure,
of talk us
right.
through it.
thank you.
So as Dr. Chu said, that the academic coach position has been with us for some time, mostly at the middle school level with one academic coach at each school. And that focus has primarily been around executive functioning and helping students really to navigate, you know, what it means to be a middle school student and have all of these responsibilities and completing their work assignments and helping them out in that way, kind of the executive functioning of planning and executing and completing. So the job description is quite old, was developed a long time ago, and I think at one point it even said, we want that person to be a certified teacher. But over the years, we have hired people who are not certified teachers for this position, and this position has never been part of the Unit A teachers. So to have that part of a job description is really not accurate and not fair. So like most of our jobs descriptions, we do need to update all of them, and this is a great opportunity to do so. Ironically, this year, through Title I funding, we also took the opportunity to add academic coaching to the elementary level at the Miller School and at day school. And these decisions were made based on Title I funds and where those services needed to be placed. So in looking at the current job description that we had, it also didn't match what we necessarily wanted to achieve at that elementary level.
And are those full-time?
They are full-time, 6 hours a day. And we also welcomed the academic coaches into the Unit G unit.
Right, with the recent negotiations.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for all those good reasons, we just need to have a refresh and an update. And I want to draw your attention to the first bullet under the position responsibilities. And in here it talks about providing high-quality, targeted academic instruction in the areas of literacy, numeracy, and executive functioning to students who might qualify for those additional tiers, levels of instruction. Clearly in here, this gives us room for whatever grade level that academic coach might be placed on to decide where that support might be focused. So if I am a middle school principal and I am posting for an academic coach, most likely I am only talking about the areas of executive functioning. In the case of Miller School this year, where Principal Melissa Boylan had the opportunity to add an academic coach, it was her job to take a look at identifying who her Title I students were and what that level of service could look like. And so for her, it was important to target kindergarten in the area of math. So when she was looking for that academic coach, that was the specifics that she was looking for. At day school, I believe the academic coach is doing a little bit of both math and literacy instruction there.
Sorry, I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
When you say like looking for, so that you looked she looked at the applicants and based on their experience and stuff like that. Is that what you mean?
Well, when we do our posting, we
Yeah.
call out what we're looking for.
Oh, I see.
And so a job description is a job description and
Yeah.
certainly a great, backdrop for what we're looking for and what the qualifications look like. But then when we go and say, okay, we need a teacher in physics, it's gonna look a lot different than a teacher at the elementary level.
Okay.
But the job description for a teacher is one.
Okay.
Recently, you approved the elementary assistant principal job description, and one of the bullets in there talked about MCAS. At the K-2 level, we would leave that part out of our
Got it,
posting.
okay.
So when we're looking for the correct candidate, we're determining what needs to go in there for what we want to address. And so this is what we've come up with for an updated job description that meets what we currently have at the middle school level, what we currently have for the Title I academic coaches. And if we are to move forward with having more academic coaches next year, if our override does not pass, then this would also meet that criteria.
Can we circle back to what you just said about the, like looking for the candidate? Because in my head, there was more flexibility to the model that, like, if you are hiring an academic coach, it could work, that person could work with a variety of students and needs. So I'm trying to balance that with what the kindergarten Miller math example. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, if I'm hearing your question correctly, I think the idea is being that next year, as we work with the principals, we'd be in a position to say, okay, well, which of these things do we want to prioritize?
Okay.
And so, based on the job that we have, and we have it already at the middle school, primarily focusing on executive functioning, because we had Title I grant opportunities, the principals were able to say, because the grant has to support
Right.
the specific needs of the Title I students.
Yep.
And so we had an example where two different principals saw two different needs under the same category.
Okay.
But what we are saying is that there is still this flexibility
Okay.
to what it could be based on what we think the needs are. And that can be part of the next conversation that we have.
Okay.
So as we're talking about the job description,
I
we're
see what you're
saying that
saying.
the
Okay.
job description is this umbrella that allows us, if we need to target very specific needs, we can within this job description. It could be something where it is a little bit more fluid, and maybe we are looking for somebody who can help support all three of those areas based on what the needs are. We're saying that the job description right now is updated, but it's also universal enough that
Okay.
it provides for a wider range of positions that can meet the needs in each level.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yep.
Okay.
Any questions on the job description, comments?
I think we'll bring it back to the next meeting if it takes two.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be
vote.
great. Yeah.
So there's plenty of time to make comment
Yeah.
if anything wants to be sent my way prior to that.
Okay.
We would welcome that.
So then the next piece of tonight's discussion is we wanted to talk more about what we were looking at for the interventions, for the supports, in the event that we are looking at the Proposition 2.5, the
I wanna start there, just
non-override
because-
budget. And so before we go to, well, we're already there.
I was going to start with elementary just to segue from the academic coaches job description.
Sure.
That makes more sense to me. That's how I'm thinking about it, right? Is that the proposal and in the no override budget
Yeah.
is 26 math and reading elementary
That's the replacement.
interventionists
Yeah.
are replaced by 6 positions of this academic coach. And
So-
so, yeah,
I was similar.
Okay.
I was going to go one step higher.
okay.
And just remind everybody that The actual model that we talk about, which is in an earlier slide, is that the number that we're trying to target is $445,000, $445,198, which is actually all 30 of the interventionists.
I see.
Okay, so I just want to start there.
The four
So that
middle school.
everybody remembers that what we're looking, as we've tried to balance the two different budgets, that our recommendation is that we are reducing our budget by $445,198, which would mean eliminating the reading and math interventionists at the elementary and middle schools, but then adding an academic coach at each elementary school. So the number that we're looking at, and so I have reasons for that as we go through the conversation.
Okay.
What are we guesstimating or averaging the cost of one interventionist?
I have all that if we're ready to get into that
Oh, okay.
conversation, or we do, or now I just
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
say
yeah.
that part, and then you
Okay.
wanted to kind of go back now to talk about the 26 versus the 6, to kind of
Yeah.
remind people what
Sure.
we're talking about.
Right, well, I think what you have next for data makes sense,
Okay.
if that's the natural
Which
question
one?
you had.
Yeah.
It's not,
Oh, yeah, okay.
in there, go ahead.
So if we, so the number that we were using at the time as we were developing the FY25 budget was the average annualized salary for the interventionists was $22,696. And the average annualized salary for an academic coach was $39,280. I'm going to quickly look at Jenny Lynn to see if she like, that's right. Okay, good. Yeah.
Checked us.
Yep. And so that's how we came up with the numbers, right? So what we
Okay.
figured out was, again, we kind of talked about this in the big picture. If we were to, all of the interventionists together are approximately $680,000 of our budget. And so if we were
Say
to.
that number again?
680,000, that's an approximate
Okay.
number. If we were to reduce all 30 of them and then hire 6 academic coaches, the final number is the $445,000, because the academic coach's annualized salary I just shared with you is $39,000, because they work more hours and they work more days.
Okay.
So they're both, the academic coach and the interventionists are all in Unit G, but there's specific language that the academic coaches work all day long and they work 184 days, whereas the interventionists work shorter days and not as many days throughout the year.
Yeah.
So one of our initial thoughts in this was that the academic coach as a person is more available, and that individual is making a higher salary. So that person is getting, they're getting a higher salary, and they are more present, and there's more flexibility for students to be working with them, because they would be at the school all day long, every single day, as opposed to the limited hours that the interventionists are there. That's an oversimplification, but I'm just trying to share with everybody the difference between those positions. So that's how we ended up with the overall reduction of $445,000, is that it would cost us to hire additional academic coaches, and so we wouldn't be realizing the full reduction of the 680, because we still want there to be some supports that are provided to the students at the elementary levels, which takes us to the conversations that we've kind of had, which is, well, we know that $445,000 is sort of our target based on the other reductions that we would need to make if we don't have an override. And so if we were to do that same thing just with interventionists, we would need to reduce 19.6 interventionists, which would leave us with 10.4 interventionists. So if we stuck with the interventionist model, but just reduced that number, we would only have 10.4 left to
Elementary and middle.
elementary and middle and they would be working shorter days and they wouldn't be working as many days during the year. So it ends up being 4 more positions than the academic coaches in order to hit that same target. This is going to be the moment in the conversation where I'm going to remind anybody who's listening to us right now that we are not talking about an ideal situation. We are talking about if the override does not pass,
Correct.
and which has not been our recommendation, which has not been the recommendation of the committee.
We do not, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's some of the numbers. I have other things, but I'm going to stop there and see if that, because I know there were some questions that you had as I'm trying to provide some of that information between Courtney and I. We're prepared to talk about what does it look like? What does,
Yeah.
you know,
One of the questions I have about the whole day versus the interventionist work day is, we know that and I'm picturing K-5, we know that the start of the day is sort of relationships, community building, the classroom routines. I guess I can't say exactly the same level of detail about the end of the day, because I just don't know that much about it, but I feel like that's something we know about the start of the day in those classrooms. So I guess I'm confused or hesitant to see that as time that should be used in these
yeah.
for this type of learning, when that's when those kids are with their peers doing the share, the turning, the relationship building, the restorative community circle type thing. So I guess I guess I'm hesitant to see that as a trade-off of some way
Yeah.
of the work
And-
flow of the day.
And I think part of that, we would need to hear more specifically from our principals
Sure.
about how they would utilize it.
Okay.
When we first talked about this as a possible trade-off, if you will, right? The response that we got from the principals was that the flexibility alone was better,
Okay.
knowing that you would then have people who would be available.
Okay.
You're right. The idea is that there are certain things, ideally, students aren't being pulled out of general education instruction ever.
Right.
Right? They're actually part of the lesson that's going on in the classroom, and then it's during the win block that they were being provided with some additional support. I think that the additional time, my initial thought as a building principal would be that I wouldn't regularly schedule someone to miss that, but it is still an opportunity. And it's an opportunity for maybe one quick check-in, or for something to take place knowing that someone might miss part of one morning meeting, not on a regular basis, but they're available, and or they're available to then be collaborating with other people to be
Like
providing
planning
support
or-
and
yeah.
doing different
Or
things like
data
that.
reviews and stuff like
there
that.
are other things that could be taking place.
Right.
It could be.
Could it be more pushing? I mean, that's the other side of it.
Well, I think
because
I would see them as then part of more of the overall
yeah,
environment of the building as well, and the community of
Yeah.
the building. Agreed.
not being so isolated, because we know that's also, when we talk about true inclusion in our classrooms, in our schools, scheduling is a way that we can be very cannot be inclusive in that sense, because you're pulling kids out of
Right.
maybe their things. So maybe the trick is to kind of balance that push in versus pull out
Right.
in that sense.
Well, scheduling is difficult at every level.
Yeah.
It's definitely the biggest, puzzle piece that principals and assistant principals are working on all the time. And the goal is how do we give the students what they need in order to be successful? And for some students, that beginning of the day might not be the easiest time of the day. And so really knowing who those students are that need the support is the most important in gauging when we can do that. And the other piece is that when we're talking about tier 2 level of intervention with an interventionist, the key is never to take the student away from the core curriculum with the general education teacher. So there should never be a time where math is being instructed to a 3rd grade class and somebody is leaving that math instruction to go receive their math instruction from an interventionist or an academic coach. What we want to be able to do is to give them the double dose. Now, the only way to give them a double dose is to miss something else.
Right.
Or to nicely fit into the WIN block that 3 to 5 offers, but pre-K to 2 does not. So there has to be some kind of a give if we're going to have this, model as rich as we can make it for the students. But again, not missing core curriculum has to be number one goal. And then, thoughtfully grouping students, and it's not necessarily every single day. So students might get pulled out 3 times a week. The intensity might increase for those students who need it, and then it might decrease for other students who might not.
That wind block, Courtney, at the K to 2 level, I didn't realise that. Is there a particular reason why we don't schedule a wind block? Because just off the top of my head now, when we say that, I can see how scheduling, if we're going from 2 or 3 interventionists in one school to now potentially 1 academic coach, I'm wondering, is a wind block going to be more helpful in that situation?
Well, we're always in competition with time on learning.
Right.
And so that really drives a lot of the decisions that need to be made. And the more you get into, these high-powered evidence-based curriculum, which we're happy to bring to schools, they're always recommending, 90 minutes, or the maximum. So it's a lot of time. It's hard to teach students how to read, right? And to give them those foundational skills, whether it's in literacy or numeracy, and we have to give them that due diligence there. So. But for that question, I wouldn't want to answer it. I'd, certainly volley it over to the elementary principals.
I can't tell here.
I just wanted to ask one other question. So we're talking about having, just on the elementary, 1 academic coach per building.
Is it a caseload question? Because I think they have more information.
No, I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify, and a literacy specialist per building? I can't remember.
It would still be per building.
Per building.
Because even in the no override situation, there's still 1. Right now, we have 2 at the K to 2s,
That's right.
K to 2 levels.
And the
1 at
literacy
3 to 5.
specialist, they can see students on or not on IEPs?
They could, students are on IEPs for a variety of
Yeah.
different reasons. Certainly, if there's a student who qualifies for special education support in the area of literacy, then most likely they are with their special education teacher. There are some students whose disability might not be necessarily that language-based. They might have a disability, specific learning disability in math. It might be in some other area, and so therefore, they would be eligible to receive some sort of intervention from our gen ed. Typically, we see that going in the opposite direction of math, right? Where we have students who are requiring support in the language arts, and then a little blip in the radar might come up with math, and they might receive some math intervention. But we try not to draw the lines too dark in terms of who is and who isn't allowed to access services when we know that the services are there and available to all students.
Sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah. So for the interventionist model, for example, if we keep the interventionist with a current budget proposal, you say that we're able to keep 10.5 interventionists.
10.4.
10.4.
Yeah.
10.4.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. That's based on the 2% allocation. Is that right? And then the 2% allocation is different from. It's not even 2.5%. Because the town gets 2.5% tax increase from the residents. So I think we should settle for the 2%, right? So that's a conversation we need to have with the town partners, because the difference between 2 and 2.5% or like 2.89%, which we got for the last 2 years, is like $300,000 to $600,000. So I don't know if we need 30 interventionists. Maybe we only need 20, depends on the entry or exit criteria, right? If we say this is a successful program, like, can we do it with 20? Can we do it with 18 instead of like 26 in the elementary school, right? So those are the things. Is like, if we can talk to town partners a little bit, which we should get a little bit more allocation, we should be able to keep the interventionist model. Probably not with as many kids as today, but like that probably is better than the academic coach option. Maybe that's something to consider. So yeah, so really like there are we do need to have a conversation with the town partners because like why are we being settled at 2%?
I like that suggestion for a couple different reasons. Certainly, fairsies, right? We want to get a little bit higher percentage. But the other piece is when we look at, could we reduce, but not reduce as significantly? It really made us self-reflect on what our MTSS model looks like. And some of the hallmarks of this intervention, this tiered level of support, is, who our teachers are, what the professional development that we have provided to them, what the curriculum products are that we have chosen, and over the past couple of years, there have been some great advancements. So we've had a model, this intervention model, that has served us well and has been in place for a long, long time. But to give us credit for what has happened over the last few years, our general education staff members are very well poised to really look at how do I scaffold for the students that are in front of me. There's been some real deliberate PD around UDL, and so that we're taking a look at, what does that mean for engagement and how do we allow for students to express how they're learning. So those are, important pieces, as well as just getting our elementary staff ready for that evidence-based reading practices, and then bringing in the EL curriculum, plus the UFly at the K-2 level. So those are really big, important pieces that will hopefully drive our decisions about who is going to receive intervention next year. We've had all these puzzle pieces for so long. The universal screeners are such an important part. We have the latest version of Dibbles, we have iReady, and we have data teams that get together and to really examine what those services look like. And I think it's really important for us to take a step back and to say, who are the students that are at risk and require those services, opposed to who are the students that might benefit from. Because if the students who might benefit from more scaffolding or more instruction, then we really want them in front of that licensed general education teacher to be able to do so. And if it's somebody who is truly at risk and requires that double dose in order for them to close that gap within an area, then we want to make sure that that's being provided to with fidelity. So I do like that suggestion.
Yeah, I think like one of the things Catherine alluded to a little bit is about inclusion. Because for kids at a young age, if it's the beneficial but not required, pulling kids out of a classroom, we may think we're benefiting the kids, but on the other hand, the kids may feel a little bit like being excluded because why am I actually in a different spot while my other friends are doing this? So it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes we may think it benefits, but the actual result may be not.
And following on actually kind of from what you were saying, Courtney, I think it was a really good point you made about how you've brought all these, you've looked at all the other components of that model in the last few years. Taking all the money conversation aside from it, is it also just a natural point in time to review our current intervention model anyway? And and so what I suppose kind of my thinking is, if this academic coach model feels better, feels more solid, works better, then it comes down to money of, well, how many academic coaches can we have?
Right.
But, it sounds like I love the fact that, it's a full-time position, they're a full member of staff, building those relationships. You would, I suppose, obviously want to make sure that they can wear essentially those three hats. And I appreciate that, the principals like the flexibility of, well, what do we need? But I think you also have to think of, well, longer term, what's that sustainability like for staff members? And so I would be hoping that those positions, we're looking for someone, at least in the elementary level, that can fill that ELA and math and executive functioning, piece, as opposed to having strengths.
And that complements what we look for in our own teachers, because we have generalists as elementary teachers that are able to do, all of those things.
It seemed like you had more. Did you have anything else?
Well, one of the things we actually didn't necessarily feel comfortable talking about was caseloads.
Okay.
Because what we do know is that it's kind of what Courtney had just alluded to. Is we know that the number of students that are being supported right now will not be the number of students who are being supported in the future. There's really no model that allows for that. And so what we really need to do is we need to look more closely at what the exit and entry, what the entrance and exit criteria is, and how are we identifying what Courtney was saying, those at-risk students who truly need the double dose of something versus students who might be struggling, who would just benefit from a little bit of extra something, which they could also be getting that with some additional support within the classroom. So that's where we don't necessarily feel like, in terms of what we know is, we can talk about the number of hours, right? We can talk about the number of hours that they'd be available.
Right.
And the number of people that it would be. And then from there, it gives us a better sense as to what type of impact that would be.
And even, I would think, for the public to just understand, and I guess it's a question I would have, is like, what a typical block is.
Right.
Is it 20 minutes? Is it 30? Is it, and to be able to visualize that with a 6-hour day.
It would be between 20 and 30 minutes. As that double dose of instruction, and small group focus, anywhere between 3 to 6 students that might be in front of an academic coach or an interventionist. And certainly we would want to make sure that each of those students required the same exact, remediation. And so you might be pulling from multiple classrooms. So if I'm or multiple grade levels, depending on what that student might require.
And I don't know if you know this information offhand, but do you know how closely the 20 to 30 minutes with small groups of 3 to 6 students reflects the current intervention model?
I do believe that based on observations and based on the information that we've had, is that the small groups tend to be smaller than 3 to 6. It's 1 to 3.
Okay.
So it'd be basically doubling those. But the time is similar. It's usually about a 20, because that's normally what a good lesson is, right? And then you take
and also K to 5. There's only so much focus time they can do.
Were you flagging me?
No,
Oh, okay,
no. Picturing the K to 5 trying to get them in for more than 20 minutes.
And the idea that it's a 60-minute lesson.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes that's the best thing to do, to give them short bursts and, more frequently than to try to stretch it out thinking, oh, great, I'm doing a 45-minute block, and then that's just not always the best. The other piece is just to make sure that we're always talking about, focusing on whether it's number sense or the phonemic awareness or whatever that readiness skill is. In math, we know that our elementary students are exposed to so much more than just that, but that application piece, the geometry, the statistics, or whatever it might be, that is not part of the intervention model. That's not where we're closing the gap. Those are exposure to different applications, but it is the number sense that we were really trying to hone in on.
So, any other thoughts or questions on, to try to bound it, specifically this change in model with no override for the elementary level? I do want to touch on the other supports after that, just to make sure that we don't have anything
For elementary.
clinging. No, I was thinking the middle school and the reading teachers, right?
Yeah,
That was your
I'd
ask.
like to,
Okay. But elementary feel like we've asked what we've got.
And thank you for kind of making that separation between the non-override and the override.
Yeah.
We sat not too long ago on a negotiation table, across the table from our interventionists and our academic supports, and certainly appreciate what they have brought to the table for years, and, would be happy to continue to work within that model. Maybe tightening up a couple areas that we can do from an administrative perspective, but we would be happy to continue to have that team working for us.
Right, very valuable supports. I did get a question that I think is sort of confusing with the way, when somebody is understanding, like, the cost increases over 3 years, but this would all change, with no override, this would all change in year 1.
Correct.
This would all be starting
Yep.
September with, instead of 26 elementary math and reading interventionists, we would just have 26 replaced with 6 academic coaches. Can't say that often, clearly enough.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So if you want to just switch to another slide with your choice, either let's go to middle school reading and math intervention.
Right there.
This one?
48,
Yeah.
I think.
Yes, 47, 48.
So, and again, just to orient everybody, again, this was just on the agenda for last discussion points or questions that really to flush out this part of the no override budget, the changes to the intervention supports across the grade levels. So this information has been previously shared back in January, but, if there was any other questions or points to raise here. So this is middle school, sorry. Which one are you on?
We actually just went backwards. So in the
Okay.
slides, it's 47, 48, and 49,
Yeah.
and we were really talking about slide
Okay.
49. Now we're going back to 48, and then
Yes, right. yeah.
47 is
Okay.
actually the reading. So we just
And
kinda
I
just
was
went
looking at the wrong
backwards.
one. So 48,
We can talk about whichever one.
which is middle school and reading math intervention.
Right.
Okay.
So
Which
if you
would,
go to 48,
Yeah.
there you go.
which would be removed,
Yep,
not replaced with something.
correct,
And each building currently has one academic coach.
correct,
Okay.
correct. So the middle school model already has an academic coach as part of their support team. The two different models are slightly different, just their schedules are slightly different. But that would still remain.
Okay.
To Courtney's point, their focus has primarily been executive functioning at the middle school level, and they've partnered with the interventionists to provide different supports for students, but but that support still exists.
Yep.
Could I ask for some questions, just thoughts on that? Because that's kind of been the one area I think I've been, really thinking about. Currently, those 2 academic coaches at the middle school, my understanding is they have scheduled time, and it's typically, from what I can gather, are students who often need that academic support, executive functioning, and are choosing to be in that class over a language.
Correct.
So, for some of our students who are currently accessing an interventionist, there's no necessary reason for them not to be in a language class, potentially. So one of the concerns that kind of just cropped up as I've been thinking about this, over the last kind of few weeks was, in terms of scheduling, are we struggling with a scheduling issue in terms of that foreign language option? Because we know some of our students who are accessing the interventionists wouldn't necessarily need that full academic class session as it is right now. And so I'm kind of wondering, as are we having these conversations, are we looking at potentially changing what that academic coach time at the middle schools could look like, knowing that maybe the student who might need to access them might look maybe a little bit different.
So that's part of where it's scheduled differently in each school.
Okay.
I'll have to double check, but speaking from my experience at Stony Brook, yes, academic coaching was scheduled in lieu of a world language class. But my understanding at Blanchard is that the academic coach is part of the rotating electives that exist, and it's part of like the SEAL, the guidance class that's also taught. So I don't know for sure. I'll have to find out, and I'll get back to you on that, because I don't know for sure if they're missing out on a language class in order to take that, or if it's part of their integrated arts rotation.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I know that there's different variability in the numbers at Blanchard than there are at Stony Brook, which tells me that some kids are just in that academic coaching class for a certain amount of time. Some of them are in it for all 3 semesters, some are not. So that tells me that there's a little bit more fluidity there. Back to your point about the interventions, the students, I mean, ideally, if they are in either one of the schools, if they are in a world language class, then their intervention is also often coming, whether it's during advisory or they're being pulled out of a class. And they're being pulled out of something and missing something. So there's still some sort of, there's still some interruption in some way. Just in general, as I'm kind of trying to explain. I think you already were aware of that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference there.
Anecdotally, I thought though, I'd heard though that in particular maybe the math interventionists were doing a lot more push-ins, so they were more kind of in specific classes to support students, but they're in with the math teacher in that component, as opposed to necessarily pulling students out, because I know they have the advisory time that they can do that too. The only other concern I have specifically about the middle school is, when we talk about an academic coach at a middle school level, needing to kind of support ELA, math, and again that executive functioning. If we're going to have similar model to what we're saying at the elementary school, is I can barely do 5th grade math, so I can't imagine some the 7th and 8th grade math that they have, and especially at the pace that we work at, I think, in Westford. Currently I think there's some benefit to having math interventionists who are very competent and very, it's just their speciality. And I just would be concerned of being able to find those staff members that really have to create that sustainable staff base. You would hate to feel that people are kind of changing every year, or that, yourself, one grade level can look very different to the needs on an annual basis. So that would be my other concern, is that at the middle school level, we might need a little bit more expertise in that.
I don't think our thought was to change the academic coaching model at the middle school to include those other discipline areas. It would remain the focus of what they have right now as far as executive functioning.
Okay.
And that's where, the job description might be a little bit different than your job posting.
Right.
Because at the middle school level, we wouldn't be looking for that catch-all generalist to be able to provide all the interventions.
So then, what's the scenario where a student is receiving something now that wouldn't be able to get it, like the tier 2 at the middle school? Right, reading and math wouldn't, we don't exist, that wouldn't exist.
That interventions, yes.
Yeah.
That specific intervention support from that person wouldn't necessarily exist.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that intervention wouldn't still exist in another way, though. It doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't be doing that, because the other piece, and I think Catherine's right, we have wonderful people who they have a great skill set, and we've actually trained them. Our curriculum coordinators have done a phenomenal job training them as well too. But what we also have is we also have really talented ESPs who are also providing support in these classrooms. So we have supported math classes and supported ELA classes and supported social studies and supported science classes as well too, where there are additional adults who are able to provide support for a number of students in the room as well. And the idea that speaks to the push-in aspect, right? Like when someone's able to come in and provide additional help to the general ed classroom teacher. What the middle school still has, which we're committed to, is holding on to their advisory model, which allows for the general education teachers to be providing additional support to the students. So instead of the student leaving advisory and going and seeing an interventionist, the student would be working with their math teacher.
Okay.
So that would be an example of where the tier 2 support is still existing, but it's not by the interventionist, it's actually by the general education teachers can provide tier 2 supports.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And again, it's not, we realize that it's going to impact
Right.
people, right?
It's not without its loss.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and, yeah, okay.
And this is separate to the general reading teachers
It is.
elective. We're not including
not
them as part of
connected.
this conversation.
Because
Yeah.
that's a completely separate class.
Yeah, which is also, if the override doesn't pass, is also.
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
That's,
So-
would be slide
and-
47.
Right, any,
That's
before we,
49,
she's
48,
doing, she's cutting my
47.
segue, any, jumping my segue. Good night, Maisha,
Good
thanks.
night, guys.
Any questions on middle school interventionists before we touch on middle school gen ed reading teachers? Okay, go ahead, sorry. I jumped you,
I
Ben.
really don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah. My understanding is just that, you know, and I appreciate your saying that the gen ed teachers are helping there, but, you know, with the advisory, but it feels like we're really pulling the rug out from, you know, yeah. Sorry.
No, I mean, I understand. I hear you, and I think your questions are great, and I feel like it's a scenario where we're saying something has to give, right? And so this is what we're looking at.
And they're like, it's uncomfortable, right? And it's unfortunate, but I would rather have these hard, frank conversations now instead of September. Families say, I didn't know
that's right.
that was
Yep.
at risk. I
Yep.
didn't know that was going away. So
Or
it's
like-
not great, but I think it's behooves
that-
us and our families to know what's at
Yeah.
risk.
Go back to the STEP conversation. We have the curriculum coordinators dotting
Yeah.
Yeah.
those focus areas, those initiatives. And now, when we take away under a no override, what they're expected to pick up in terms of PD and training and,
Right.
and deliver for our teachers,
Right.
for our academic coaches whose caseload goes up.
I mean, is there some value that, you know, us as a committee kind of also have a conversation, as Ming Chen was saying, you know, that once we see where we're headed financially on the town-wide, that we would go back with more specific conversations with our town partners to say, listen, this is just the one, you know, let's just say middle school intervention or support. This is just the one area that we really feel we need to fund. You know, if there's any way we can kind of reopen that conversation, as you were saying, Ming Chen.
Right, and I know you've said this, I think, publicly before too, is that what's always open to us, which while not fiscally responsible, is one-time use funds. So while that's absolutely not
Right.
our fiscal recommendation, but if we felt like, wow, the kids who are are entering middle school, who's got their, I'm losing the track of grade levels and
Who
where,
was in COVID
what,
and
yeah, and who was
Right.
impacted by which COVID year, but, you know, if we're wrestling with this on May 8th and some reality based on the votes, you know,
It also potentially buys us a bit of time as well to see exactly where we're at, and also as we build FY26, and I mean, That's what those one-time funds are sometimes for.
Okay, any last unfortunately uncomfortable thoughts? Okay. Well, I am going to move us on because we are pretty late tonight. So, policy updates. This is the second comeback of these same 6 policies.
Yep.
They have been open for public comment. We have, sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
No, you can totally give the update. I want to check your policy.
We have gotten feedback from building leadership, and any emails that have been sent are being reviewed by policy subcommittee.
Yep.
So if members of the public are watching this, it is up on our district website from the homepage. You go find our policy page, and that's where the link is to give feedback.
It's on the school committee page.
Thank you.
You'll see it on the sidebar. It says policies, public comment.
Yep.
And those are the ones that are actively open.
Yep.
There's
Or we can always take an email.
We can
if
always
that's
take an
easy.
email.
Yep.
There's a Google form there on that page then that you can just fill out, and we ask you just mention the specific policy number that you're referring to.
Yep.
With your comments.
Anything that you've seen that you want to speak to? Otherwise, we'll just leave these to, and then, the rest of that timeline would be that they come back for a vote on April 22nd.
Yeah. So the public comment period finishes this Thursday, April 11th. And the policy subcommittee will meet then on Friday to do kind of a final review of any feedback gathered. So far, any of the feedback we've received has all been, kind of small tweaks or adjustments. We did get some feedback from a community member discussing kind of, because if you look at some of the policies, which I know you've all read start to finish, we often refer to kind of maybe forming a committee, and one of the suggestions, which the policy when we met last Thursday at this point, kind of discussed it, was actually maybe using our school advisory councils a bit more in those instances, as opposed to forming other committees.
Right.
And so we kind of wanted to share this with everyone tonight. We had a really good discussion around that, and just how, typically those are elected parent members, staff members, administrators. They meet on a monthly basis.
Yep.
They know each other. They know the school improvement plans. So that's something that's
And
been
they've got some
considered.
longevity to it, like continuity. I mean, like they stagger the parent
Terms.
reps, the terms, thank you. And
Yeah.
then I think you're supposed to serve for 2 years.
Yeah.
So, that's great.
And then also in the incident of, if it's a library material kind of that needs to be for reconsideration, you would also then invite the librarian to attend or engage with that group. So I know Chris Sanders is kind of exploring that more, but if any of you have any feedback or thoughts on that, I think it would be good to hear of, because it might be something that we might actually update or change.
I liked the suggestion. Someone had reached out to me as well too to share that with me, to
Yeah.
get my perspective, seeing as I was a building principal for a while and worked closely with the SACs.
Yeah.
I like the suggestion. I like the idea of being able to utilize people who are already kind of doing work. My one thought is sometimes any one of these issues or something might be a short-term commitment that another parent might be willing and interested in participating. Like when we have interviews, like I was thinking, like when we do interviews and things like that, that's like, it's going to be like 2 weeks, right? And so there might be parents who aren't able to commit to the SAC, but they would be interested in helping out. So I was thinking, I was going to encourage the policy as you're looking at it to see, is there a way that, you can look at it so it's included, but but it doesn't become prohibitive.
Yeah.
Right. So that you could still include somebody who might, who depending on what it is, because again, we're looking at trying to be as universal, knowing that anything could come up at any time. But then, is it inclusive as opposed to exclusive?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
you.
Yeah, just the only other feedback then we got at the time was looking at including more parent voice in some of the policies. So I know we're kind of reviewing it. We did have a
Like parent
discussion.
reps or like families?
Families.
Family voice,
Um,
okay, caregivers.
But I think it depends really on the policy and the place, because some areas are just clearly, they are based on our staff and
Yep.
the curriculum they follow and the guidelines they follow. So we're kind of reviewing that, but that's really the only feedback so far we've had.
And that seems like a place, and quickly thought, is to lean into what the MASC best practice template there is,
Yeah.
right? So, okay, great. So we look forward to that coming back on April 22nd. And if committee members have any feedback to forward to the policy chair.
By Friday morning at the latest.
Friday morning at the
'cause-
latest. Okay, personnel update.
That would be me. Nothing outstanding.
Okay.
Other than just welcoming Jennifer Schaefer as our new HR generalist to the team. So we're quite excited that we were able to find her hidden over at Blanchard Middle School as a administrative assistant to the guidance counseling staff. And lo and behold, she has a wonderful HR background in the private sector and had taken some time off before jumping back in. And so we are happy that she's with us right now.
And I, just with all of the budget conversations and the community questions, just to clarify, this is not a new position. It was filled, the individual left, separated, and this is filling that position. And in recent years, the HR department has evolved, and this is a critical piece to have filled.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. Next, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. As an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position, the committee will not return to public session.
So moved.
Thank you, and a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. I think we still have Chris, so I'm gonna go roll call. Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And Chris?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, good night.
Peace, Jamie.